All right. We're here with Daniel Love, Lucid Dreaming Portal. We're here to talk to him about his approach for lucid dreaming and just have a good time. How are you doing today?
Hi there. I'm very well, Sensei. Sensei Brandon. What do I call you? I feel weird calling you Sensei. I haven't used that term since karate years ago. So.
Oh yeah, you can just call me Brandon. That works.
Brandon. Okay, nice one.
Yeah.
I can see the comments here. So hello, everyone in the comments. Silvaz, Rantinia, Guam, Johnny, Dr. Foxy, and all the malarkey there. Anyway, I'll shush and let you talk because that's your stream. So I'm too used to running streams. Yeah,
you're good. Yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and put user in a timeout for now. He's going crazy. So let's see. I got some notes here. Basically, I know that I've looked up a lot of your videos in the past, seen your history and stuff like that, and I just I forgot a little bit of it. How did you start lucid dreaming?
Okay, so the short lazy story, because I'm so bored of saying it at this point. You get to a certain age and it's like you've said it so many times, but when I was knee-high to a grasshopper, like 5 years old, I had really bad parasomnia, sort of nightmares, sleepwalking. The story I like to tell people is one night my parents heard me screaming. So imagine this, a 5-year-old little kid, they hear screaming from the other bedroom, and they come in to see what's going on. I've been sleepwalking, had a nosebleed at the same time. There are bloody handprints all over the wall. So it's like a nightmare scene for them. But I was just having these recurring nightmares pretty much nightly. So child brain, I can't really remember. It's so long ago now, back with the dinosaurs. I just decided I've got to fix this somehow because going to bed was terrifying. So I thought, kind of child logic, if I can catch the moment I fall asleep and fall into a dream, then I'll know it's a dream and I won't be worried about it. Something like that, probably way more stupid than that at the time. But so my goal became basically just lay there in bed at night trying to catch that moment. Never really did, and that became a technique I called catching the butterfly in the long run. But the sort of intention setting led to lucidity, and then sort of I had lucid dreams, throughout my childhood. Went away during teenage years because other things became more interesting, like partying and exploring the mushrooms that grew in the field next door and that kind of thing. So it kind of went away a bit, and then I can't remember the exact way things panned out. Saw something to do with LaBerge. Keith Hearn was on a show called Tomorrow's World. Got back into it, threw myself into studying psychology, all that malarkey. And just as you know, with this stuff, you get caught up in the rabbit hole of lucid dreaming. And if you're the kind of person who's interested in philosophy and psychology and spirituality and all that kind of stuff, and I was a raging hippie, despite everyone thinking I'm sort of anti-New Age stuff. I had dreadlocks, I wore rainbow jumpers, I nose piercing. I was awful, absolutely. Did astral projection, had bags of crystals. So was totally wacky hippie young teenage guy, and then went into psychology, decided to turn this into a career, if you can call it that, because no one makes any money in this subject at all. Even the big names, like LaBerge and Hearn and all those guys, they're scraping by. So word up to anyone watching, don't pirate their books, because if you do that, you're basically they're going to be eating beans out of their hands. So don't do that. Anyway, I'll shush. I need to hydrate as well. So. What's all this Lucid Cats, by the way?
So I think you had a video about being like a cat in order to get lucid. So I wasn't sure. I didn't watch the video. I was thinking about it, but I figured I'd ask you about it. What is the idea behind that?
Can I even remember the video, to be honest? This is the thing.
Make a lot more videos than me. So
yeah. It's I've been on YouTube. I think it's coming up to 8 years. Don't know how the hell that happened. Wasn't intending to be a YouTuber at all to start with. So but I think there's like over 700 videos or something silly like that. So I imagine that was probably about just napping. And the cat thing was just, well, you know what it's like with YouTube. You start off with the best intentions. You do like sensible titles, sensible thumbnails. Then YouTube slaps you around a bit, like, oh, we're not going to show those to anyone. And it sort of weans you into now say something dramatic or something. Cats, YouTube cats. I thought that would be an interesting, metaphor. But yeah, the idea is basically if you the morning nap approach by LaBerge. So he did some research that if you woke up, stayed awake for about an hour, then went back to bed, did something like the mild technique, you had 40% higher chance of lucid dreams or something like that. Most of my lucid dreams happen in morning naps, but I'm aware that's not practical for most people, because lucky with my work that I can nap in the morning, not so much now that I've got a cat. But so I think that video was about that. So silly name for a blame YouTube, don't blame me. I'm just don't blame the messenger. YouTube's a snakehead. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like either like an elongated wake back to bed sort of thing where you're just getting up and getting around.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and wake back to bed was actually I want to say stolen, but that's probably a bad thing to say. I already have enough people hate what I say. Wake Back to Bed was originally created by I can't remember the name of the guy. It was back in, like when Dream Views was at its peak. And I think there were, even back when the Lucidity Institute had a forum. LaBerge released that research, and then there was a really new age ebook seller, the kinds which pop up every 5 minutes with lucid dreaming, and then buy this £80 ebook, and he just was shilling Wake Back to Bed on all of the forums. I think the original thing said something like he had 20 lucid dreams in one night. So, okay, that matches sleep cycles. What? But people bought into it. The term became popular. But really, what he was doing was LaBerge's research had just come out, and he just sort of reworded it. So Way Back to Bed's got weird origins. Like I kind of don't like using the term because of that, because it's kind of a nod in the head of someone who was a shill, basically. And I'm a finicky old git when it comes to stuff like that. So,
yeah, that makes sense. I found that for me, any sort of waking really increases the chances like mad, and especially the later on in the night. Or later on in the morning, I am also able to take naps and stuff like that. I've been a stay-at-home dad for like 9 years now, so that has been extremely helpful.
Makes a difference, doesn't it? When you've got that bit of extra free time, I think that's one thing it's easy to forget when you're a teacher in this subject or creator or something, is that most people have got alarm clocks just slapping them awake every morning, and I don't miss those days at all. So apologies to when I'm mentioning morning naps to people, because I know that not everyone can do them.
And what I've noticed is if someone is too free, like if they just have oodles of free time and they'll be like, I got nothing to do this whole summer, they never get around to lucid dreaming. They spend the whole summer playing. But then you have someone that they have kids or they're working or something like that, and then when they're not working, they're spending their time working.
Maybe it's a personality type, right? So if you're the sort of person who can get stuff done and stay focused, then you end up getting lucid. Like some of I do personal tuition malarkey, and every now and then I'll get someone through who's sort of really high functioning, like a lawyer or something, or someone really like makes me feel absolutely like a total plebhead. And they just take to lucid dreaming. They don't have the time for the practices, but because they're used to following like a regime and data collecting and all that kind of thing, it just helps. Bear with me 1 second. I thought I put my phone on silent and it's making noises at me, so I'm just going to do that. Embarrassing, so unprofessional. There we go.
That's all good.
And actually, I'm just going to do a quick lucidity check, because practice what you preach and all that, right? So,
it looks like we have a question. Let's go to here. It says, do you have any tips on noticing awakenings, and what do you do to notice them?
Graham, did you ask me that in a stream or something recently? I'm pretty sure I've had that question really soon. Basically, it's just intention setting. So tips for setting intentions is really hard. So like, if you go into the store to buy something, how do you remember to buy that thing? Whichever part of your brain you're using to do that, use that to set intentions. It's not some kind of highbrow psychological thing. It's just the thing you use every day to remember to do something in the future. So what I would say, when you go to bed, just say to yourself, I want to notice when I wake up. And then just practice with different parts of your brain. I always struggle trying to explain this, because no two brains work the same, as you're aware. So, like, for example, I'm aphantasic. I have no visual imagination at all. So when I try to talk to people about visualization techniques, I have no smegging idea what that's like to see something with your eyes closed. I mean, why would people want to lucid dream if they can do that? That sounds amazing to me. But yeah, everyone's brain's slightly different. You have to experiment, play around with it. But yeah, think about how you remember to do things in the day. Use that part of your brain, and you need to want. There needs to be that sort of genuine wish to do something. So probably whatever your dream goal is, think about that. If it's something that really inspires you, put that energy behind it. So set an intention with a really strong bit of energy. Like if you go to the store to buy some chocolate, you're going to remember. If you're going to the store to buy lentils, you might forget, because there's that expectational energy of the chocolate's going to be a nice thing. I'm rambling, so I'm just going to shut up for a bit and drink. So.
Yeah. No, yeah, I like that idea to put the intention behind it, like with something emotional that you are like excited about. I think it's a lot harder throughout the night and in dreams, because throughout the day we're kind of dependent on phones and stuff to remind us and what we see.
Yeah.
In a dream, I mean, we're just trying to set intention, or throughout the night, we're trying to set intention to notice something that we may or may not even see throughout the night. We're not gonna always see our dream signs or anything like that. So
yeah, and I think relying too much on dream signs is this is where my views on things diverge from a lot of people's. But the idea of using something external, like something in the dream environment, to remind you, it can work. But the main difference between you and a dream and you when you're awake is your state of mind. So, not to get boring, sciencey, but essentially your prefrontal cortex is mostly shut down during dreaming. So you don't have that critical awareness. You're way more emotional. So it's better off to look for inner dream signs. So are most of your dreams anxiety related or stress dreams, or they could be happy things as well? I always, for some reason, default to anxiety. Don't know what that says about me. But yeah, so if you use metacognition and think about your thinking and how you're feeling during the day, and notice when there are gear changes in your intellectual and emotional state, that seems to be a way broader ranging thing and more likely to crop up in the dream world. Because let's say your dream sign is a dolphin playing the banjo. How the hell do you reality check to that during the daytime? It's just bonkers. So
yeah. Oh yeah, I like the term gear change. That's an interesting way to put it. And that's one of the reasons, like, I always tell people, like, if you're not sure if it's a dream, or if you're not sure, like, there's always like this questioning that I have during dreams where I'll be doing something and I'm like, oh wait, that doesn't make sense. And the dream will start to explain it. But as soon as my dream starts to explain anything, my mind's like, no, like, stop. That's dream logic. So I try to, like, I spent a lot of time focusing on that feeling of just like, of your mind explaining stuff to you, and be like, when my mind is just explaining everything, that's a dream. That's not.
It's kind of autopilot logic, right? Where it's anything but it being a dream is the correct answer. But I think that's because we're arrogant about being awake, right? So right now, everyone watching this, me, you, we all think we're awake. We're just taking it for granted. That habit needs to be broken. But we're not used to genuinely questioning reality. Even now, after like 40 odd years of doing this, when I do a reality test, I'm going to mix up reality test, reality check, whatever you call the damn things. Whenever I do it, even now, it takes that moment of, no, hold on a second, do it right. Are you really doubting whether you're awake or dreaming? Because half the time you do it sort of, well, even back then, I think that little test there, the micro test, was slightly on autopilot, and I'm not too proud of myself for that. So I'm going to just do a very subtle double check.
Yeah, and that's oh frick! I was reading the comments and I lost what I was going to say.
It's easy to do, isn't it?
Oh yeah, someone said above that the reason is visualization is not nearly as immersive as lucid dreaming, so that's why they're saying it's just not quite the same. It's kind of like the difference between reading a book versus like watching a movie or going and doing something. Like if you're reading a book about the Grand Canyon or watching a movie about it or going and visiting, the dream would be like visiting it.
Aphantasia is a weird one, and no one, if you don't have it, it's really hard to understand what it's like, because you think in sort of incredibly abstract terms. It's like your subconscious gives you the answer without the the visual processing beforehand, which is it's weird. And
Yeah.
my partner is the opposite. They have a like really, really good visual imagination, like a Sherlock, you know, sort of. It's weird. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't generally like, I have to put things into words from my visuals and my stuff like that. Like everything in my head is so clear, visualization all the time. And then yeah, in order to think in words, I put it into words and I kind of just choose from a list that I can see of what words I'm going to say. So for someone to not see things in their head, it's crazy.
Sounds like magic. It sounds like magic to me. So, but again, this is, I mean, to make this sort of relatable to everyone, I suppose. This is why it's such a hard subject to teach, because the principles are really easy. You know, question whether you're dreaming. You know, be observant, be aware, blah blah blah. But each of us is really complicated.
Yeah.
You know, if I had 5 seconds in your brain and vice versa, it would be like going to an alien planet. Like we would just both be overwhelmed with how strange our perceptions were and, you know, ways of thinking. So when I'm trying to teach, say on YouTube, sounds pretentious when you say it that way, right? So, but when you're trying to explain something to a wide audience, and I think this is where people sometimes misunderstand me and kind of get grumpy, you're kind of having to dumb it down and broaden it out.
Yeah.
Because the principles can't possibly apply the same to every single psychology. So you have to take it to the simplest level, explain that, and then explain on top of that well, now you're going to have to tailor it to your own brain. And that's when you do personal tuition, like if you and I talk about lucid dreaming, we're going to have a much more interesting discussion about it, because you get to hear how my brain works, I get to hear how your brain works, and then the conversation's real. But if you're talking broadly, it's one of the reasons I kind of avoid lucid dream communities, actually, because it always descends to that lowest common denominator, like the common ground everyone has. And then people argue over sort of really trivial things, like the name of a technique. So, well, it's kind of, who cares? You know, who really cares whether it's, you know, mild or vild or splild or some silly term?
Yeah. One of the things that I've noticed, and it's the hardest thing to teach to like beginners is it's really hard for anyone to question whether or not they're actually in a dream or awake unless they've had a lucid dream before.
Yeah.
And because there was just one time I was in my room and I'm like, I should do a reality check. I just woke up and I was like, this is obviously awake. I don't need to do a reality check. I did it and I've got like 15 fingers on one hand, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is the craziest thing. And it's after that, after that, anytime I was checking, I just remember that moment. I was like, I know that I could be fully sure and in my right mind and could think this is for sure waking life, but it be a dream.
I suppose that's, you know, the confidence you build from having had a lucid dream just gives you that easy way to tell the difference, or not the easy way to tell the difference. And someone who's never had a lucid dream, you know, probably just, I mean, so often people mistake it for something else, you know, vivid imagining or, you know, hypnagogia or something. I swear half the time when you're talking to the public about lucid dreams, people don't realize what you're actually talking about. I remember years back doing workshops, and there was one person who was there for the whole, I think it was a couple of months of weekly workshops. And then the question at the end of the workshop was, so what exactly is a lucid dream? So, oh my God. Talk about undermining your sense of being good at teaching when that happens. But it was just, they completely believed it was some form of meditation imagining. Which, I mean, makes sense. If you've never had one, then you're going to go with what you know. But always worth bearing in mind when you're talking to anyone online about lucid dreaming, maybe they're not talking about the same thing. Maybe they're talking about some other state. Maybe it's lucid hypnagogia, if there is such a thing, liminal dreaming, which is much easier to be aware in. Crikey, it's warm. I'm just going to pop on a fan. If it gets really sort of fan noise, let me know. Bear with me 1 second.
All right.
Oh, crikey. There we go. Hopefully, oh Christ, now my camera's acting like a lunatic. Bear with me. Yeah.
All right.
Is that all good? No weird noises in the background?
Yeah, I don't hear anything, so I think we're good.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. The next topic I had was incubation. Have you ever done any incubation?
Do you mean sort of setting your intention for what you want to dream about
Yes.
before? Yeah, I tinker with it a bit, but have never really had much success with it. Some people do. I think the reality shifting community, as silly as that is, I think what they're really doing is using dream incubation to have sort of semi-lucid dreams.
Yeah.
And because the scripting principle is basically dream incubation, right? Write down what you want to dream about, obsess about it all day long, repeat it like a mantra, and then for some people it works, for other people it doesn't. But yeah, personally, I don't have much success with it. Don't really need to be honest, because I've tweaked all the other bits to have the lucid dreams. But I kind of wish it did work because it would be nice. But for those who it does work for, it can work a real treat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so when I was growing up, I just it never crossed my mind that you could realize inside a dream that you were dreaming. So I
Yeah.
did dream journaling and stuff like that, but I did it with just I wanted to see my dreams, and my dreams would be very vivid, very intense. And
Yeah.
then I got to the point where at some point I started whenever you like wake up from a nightmare, you go back to sleep and you enter the nightmare again. Has that happened
Yeah.
to you before?
Oh,
So
all the time. Yeah.
yeah. So I had the idea basically. I was like, well, what if I go back to sleep and instead of going back to a nightmare, I would just go back to whatever dream I just had. And so then my nights shifted from being, like beginning of the night, have these weird dreams, and then just kind of like go on. It would just sort of be like one long story most nights as I was growing
Yeah.
up. And then I also had this time when I was like 16, I started watching anime and stuff like that, and I started wanting the abilities into my dreams. And so I would, in my mind at the time, it made sense to me, which it's like it doesn't make any sense now. Really, I was like, oh, if I just think that I have the ability, I'll have the ability in dreams at some point. So I started
Yeah.
going around at first using telekinesis in my head. And then after, I don't even know how many months, but at some point I just started using telekinesis in my dreams, started using fire in my dreams. But I don't know how much time it was. And I think that's a big deal for a lot of people is they want quick results. And I was just kind of doing this in the background of my life. I wasn't keeping track of the days. I was dream journaling because I love dreams. So it just it always made sense to me. And a lot of people really, they struggle with the idea that, oh, hey, like you do this in 4 months from now, you might have this in your dreams. That's
it's a weird one. Yeah, I think one of the criticisms I get for the way I teach, so I noticed someone saying we have completely different views on this earlier, which we should deal with that whole thing at some point, because I don't think we do think that differently, really.
I don't think so.
Oh, crikey, I've just forgotten what I was going to say. What were we talking about? Yeah, the dream incubation. So one of the things I do when I teach online is I try to really manage expectations, because there are some people who do just find lucid dreaming much easier. I'm not convinced that there are people who are lucid in every dream. I've never met one. There's never been any evidence of that, but there are people who claim that's the case. But even if that were true, they'd be useless at teaching other people. It's like living in a world full of really short people, and they eat from from apple trees, and 1 in 1,000 people is really tall, and they can reach the top apples. Can the really tall person who can reach the top apples help the short people learn how to reach the top apples? Obviously not, because they need their own separate techniques, building ladders, that kind of thing, that the tall people never have to use. So when I'm teaching, I'm trying to teach the majority group, because most people struggle. It's not that easy for the vast majority, and most people give up as a result of that, which is kind of sad, really. So I think if you manage expectations to start with, kind of, we've all seen the really hyped up stuff out there. I think if you come to this expecting really quick results, some people are going to be lucky and get it, but most people won't. And I'd rather the people who won't get the quick results, which is most people, stick with it long enough to get results. And if that means coming across like a grumpy old git who complains about things all the time, then so be it, because it saves people headaches. And so certainly back in my hippie days of the dreadlocks and rainbow jackets and stuff, I went down so many just dead ends, like crystals, for example. Really great idea. It's such a lovely idea that crystals will do things to you and change the way you think. And I spent probably a good couple of years with various people, like putting crystals on my chakra points and all that kind of silly nonsense. And I mean, it was great at the time. I mean, it was fun. And you can kind of convince yourself, like placebo, that something's happening. But when you realize that you've basically just wasted your time, and you think, well, I can spend those 2 years learning something that was real. And now I've got a bunch of pretty looking rocks, which would be great ornaments. But they were expensive, and I wasted 2 years of the limited time on planet Earth. So half the time when I'm being a little bit skeptical, it's mostly with the idea to save kind of younger me, because I was such a gullible buffoon back then. Like, I just believed everything and wanted everything to be true. Wasted so much time. There will be people who are as gullible as I was when I was a teenager. So if I can save one of them, it kind of negates my wasted time, if that makes sense. Bit of a sidetrack, but
yeah. So I think with the idea we've talked about, like, I'm sure you've heard the term Omni Lucid. I think with that, I think there's a kind of a definitional difference as far as like what exactly is a lucid dream. Because where I generally draw the line has always been if I know it's a dream, kind of almost like in any way, shape, or form. If I know it's a dream, then it's a dream. And so we have this thing. It's called we call it Rails, basically, in the forum, the Discord, and it's basically like, it's a dream, but you just follow along with the dream anyways. And what I've noticed is every single person that has claimed to be Omni, which is, again, like, I generally know that it's a dream, and in all of my dreams, there'll be one here and there that I don't know, but I still follow the dream plot. I'll still do stuff like that. And then as the night goes on, as the dreams get a little more clear and vivid and all of that stuff, then at some point I'll break out of the dream plot and I will go and do my own thing. It's not going to be this whole like, let's see, have you, like, one time I tried basically to like just do wild, because I've spent so much time trying to wild. I tried to do wild for like just night after night after night, see how it happened. And after 3 nights of trying that, it was like, my brain was like, no, we're not doing that anymore. You're going to sleep. You're going to get good dreams. You're going to do this. And so I feel like there is some sort of a limit there, as far as if you want to, you can send things into your dreams. Like I send the idea of dreams into my dreams, and I send that with either incubation or mild or some sort of intention technique. But if I want to send that fact that I'm dreaming and the fact that I'm slowing down, I'm like fully gaining consciousness, I'm choosing exactly what I want to do. If I'm sending all of that, I can't send that to I can't set intention for all of my dreams. At that point, I'm looking at a dream or 2 or 3 a night. I'm not looking at all 5 or 6 REM cycles every night. I think that's where we differ there, is because I consider the first one's lucidity. I consider anytime it's a dream. Whereas I think for you have like a higher bar for lucidity.
Yeah, possible. I mean, I completely get that, definitions, words are really low resolution things, aren't they, for what the high definition things we're trying to talk about. So for me, lucidity, I would define it. So a lot of the dreams I have would be classified as lucid by that definition, but I wouldn't call those lucid dreams. So for me, and who gets to choose what the definition is? There's not really a firm definition yet, so I'm just going to keep banging my drum, and the people who agree with me can agree with me, and the people who don't have to. But for me, I think the knowledge that you're dreaming plus a high level of cognizant critical thinking. So knowing that you're dreaming means. So just simply knowing that you're dreaming, you can have sort of a fake lucid dream, right? Where you're acting as if it's a lucid dream, but when you wake up, you realize you weren't actually present. Whereas I would say the opposite is not knowing that you're dreaming, but feeling present. sort of having your prefrontal cortex engaged and you feel like you're there, I think that's where people start to think they're astral projecting or or reality shifting, because if you felt like you were in a different world and you're truly there and you hadn't concluded it was a dream, I'd be convinced I'd left my body.
Yeah.
That would be a really logical explanation, especially for people who don't know what lucid dreaming is.
Yeah.
And then back to the whole, what's the definition of a lucid dream and how many people have really had it. So yeah, I stick with the definitions I use in my book and stuff, just because, well, that's my style of teaching, I guess. But I do get that, yeah, if you're defining it that way, then I have no beef with that whatsoever. It's just that we'd be having a different discussion. Say if you came over to my channel and we did the same thing, we'd be talking in different terms then. So yeah, what am I trying to say? Basically, yes, that's cool by me as far as I'm concerned. So,
Yeah. Yeah, and I've noticed that a lot of people, it's not even like they're aiming for lucid dreams. It's not even like a lucid dream they want. They just want cool dreams.
Yeah, which is fair enough, right? So
yeah, and I've tried many times to get people to just be like, hey, instead of working so hard on lucidity, just work on recall, just work on getting more present dreams and just have fun that way.
yeah.
But very few people, I think it might be like a bit of a pride thing. Like whenever they start, they're like, oh no, I started working on lucid dreaming, so I need to keep working on lucid dreaming. And I'm like, just have fun.
Well, I think if you look at the history of lucid dreaming, and I'm going to spiel out the silly name of the guy who wrote the first Western book. I apologize for this, but I like showing off that I can remember it. But it's Mary-Jean Léon Lecoq de Marquis de Herve de Saint-Denis. He wrote Dreams and How to Guide Them, the French book on lucid dreaming. Lucid dreaming hadn't even been named at this point. I think it was 1867, if I'm remembering correctly, that he wrote his book. And it wasn't named for a while after with the Dutch guy, Van Eden. But he wasn't aiming to have lucid dreams because he didn't know they existed.
Yeah.
And all he was interested in was dreaming. So he kept a really detailed dream journal. He wanted to dream about certain things. The guy was a bit odd at times. Like I think he went to a dance and there were a couple of ladies there he like wanted to dream about. He never went into detail in the book, but he paid for someone to have a music box made that would play the tunes that he would dance with these ladies with in the dance hall, and then have his servants come and play the music box during the night when he was sleeping, so that would influence his dreams. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is his massive focus on dreaming led to, I think it was 18 months later, he started having pretty much nightly lucid dreams, which he called, I think, dreams in which I'm aware of my own situation. I think that's how he called them. But oddly, because there was no literature, nothing about lucid dreaming back then, he never made the logical leap to do really crazy stuff in his dreams. So they were always still quite normal. He might jump off things and survive or see whether he got injured. But he never sort of flew into space or traveled through time. But he was lucid as a result of dream journaling alone, without even knowing what it was. So that basically is what you're saying.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I read that book a long time ago, and I wish when I was reading it, I was like, there's got to be a better translation for this.
It's not great, is it? I think I know the one you're talking. Yeah, there's 2 translations. I think maybe 3 now. If you can get hold of the Duckworth one, it's like this green covered hardback. But it's quite pricey. I think I paid sort of £200 for a copy. It was way too much. But that translation is just written in normal English. It's not all this hyper flowery Victorian madness that the other translation is directly what he said, which is nice to hear his exact words.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it makes you want to rip your eyeballs out because it's just so hard to read, right? So
yeah. It was definitely a rough read.
But the guy who did the translation is wonderful. He knows everything about that chap. I won't say the name again. But he's trying to translate the book into as many different languages as possible. And I believe he's Dutch and speaks French, German, and Dutch, and just a bit of English. So the fact that it's translated at all is kind of amazing. He's just put so much work into it. I wish I could remember his name, but getting old and my memory for names is terrible. So
Oh no, is that what awaits me next decade?
yeah, how old are you? I guess you're in your 30s, right?
Yeah, I'm
Or
33.
yeah, don't feel old. I'm just going to say this for your sake and anyone who's under 40. Never ever feel old in your 30s. You're not. You're absolutely not. Just enjoy it. When you get to 40, then you're old. Then things start to ache and your brain gets all stupid. So
When I'm 40, I can feel old. All right, I'll wait till then.
yeah, I made the mistake. I spent all of my 30s feeling old, and then I got to being 40s. Like, oh, Lord Christ, yeah. Now I'm genuinely old.
Yeah, I honestly I don't have enough time to feel old. I've got 3 kids, so I'm too busy.
That is hard work. Yeah.
Has the book been translated to Dutch?
I believe it would make sense that he would have done that. I think his name is something like Carlos Dunblanken. That's going to be an awful pronunciation of the Dutch name, but it's something like that. But if you search for Saint-Denis Dreams and How to Direct Them, I think is his translation, and maybe Dunblanken. I'm such a British person when it comes to trying to pronounce any other language, but that should.
Americans usually worse. So
yeah, we're so insular in our countries, aren't we? Just like embarrassing.
Yeah.
Check through the comments.
James says he's turning 30 tomorrow. Poor guy. Oh no, yeah, tomorrow.
Well, 30's great. 30's are brilliant. Yeah, and happy birthday.
Oh yeah. So do you have one of the things I was gonna ask is do you have persistent like items or characters or places that you go to in your dreams?
Kind of. I mean, I'd like to keep my lucid dreams as varied as possible. Because what I think is if you go to the outer reaches of what you know, then it's kind of overclocking the brain. It's the equivalent of like overclocking your PC. So if you're dreaming about your city and your friends and blah blah blah, and the TV shows you like, that's all well formed schemas or neural pathways in your brain. But when you push the brain to try to generate something it has very little information about, then weirdness happens. It gets very sort of DMT, abstract madness takes hold, and that interests me more because you do this for so long. There's only so many times you can do the superhero thing, or the obvious sort of wish fulfillment. So for me now, I'm way more interested in the really obscure, abstract parts of psychology and what self means and what I suppose it's what people would call spirituality. I try not to call it that because then it gets, it's a word which is so loaded with ideas. Yeah. So I would say sort of the philosophical implications of it rather than spiritual, because then it's like, what kind of spiritual? I don't know. So, but I'm fascinated with what happens after death. What the self is. Is there anything persistent to consciousness beyond the body? I try not to talk about those things publicly much because I think it's unbelievably arrogant to think that I'm a primate on planet Earth like everyone else. I've got no idea why we're here, what all of this is about. So I find it a bit cringy when I see sort of the guru types who will tell people what reality is and that there's this dimension you can go to. Is like, I don't know whether I believe that. I believe there are deeper answers to existence, but they may not necessarily be the ones we want. I mean, there may not be life after death, right? But we won't know until we get there. I'm going off on random tangents here, but yeah, for me, lucid dreaming is these days about exploring the absurd more than anything.
Exploring the absurd. I like that. It's definitely not how I dream, but it is interesting. I know one guy. He just fights in every single dream he has.
Wow.
And I honestly, I know. I'm like, I can't even. That sounds so stressful to me.
I'm a horrible pacifist, so I would hate that. That would be nightmares as far as I'm concerned, especially dream fighting, because you sort of try to punch and it's all slow motion through water, and I even get that in lucidity. Actually, it's odd.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Someone asked this. Broken down parts of consciousness to talk in a lucid dream. I'm not sure what
I'm
that
trying to work
means.
out. Yeah, I'm trying to work out what that. I
Maybe
think.
talk to your consciousness.
Yeah, I suppose the way I see the brain these days, and bear in mind this is total personal opinion, is that we are a system of independent functions in the brain that work together a bit like an orchestra. So if you imagine, okay, metaphor time, apologies for this getting a bit weird. So let's say a piece of music, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Everyone knows that. Imagine an orchestra playing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. You recognize the tune. It's something that exists. It has a personality, a sound. Where's the tune? Is it the notes? Is it the vibrations in the air? Is it the individual members of the orchestra? And how much of that is it the gaps between the notes? Is it the silence? So what happens if you take away 50% of the orchestra and 50% of the notes? You'd still recognize the tune, probably. So I think lucidity is like most of the orchestra playing most of the tune, and a non-lucid dream is like part of the orchestra playing part of the tune. So the problem is, can you talk to other parts of your consciousnesses? I think that's happening all the time. I think it's happening right now.
Yeah.
I have no idea what the next words coming out of my mouth are going to be. It's a surprise to me hearing them, because the me that identifies as me is kind of a silent watcher in the brain. I don't know whether that's the same for everyone. So who's pulling all the strings? And I do wonder whether when you go into the lucid space, whether you're just interfacing with genuine sentient parts of other sentient parts of the brain that just do their thing, and it all works like the orchestra with Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. So maybe it's something like that. It feels like that. And when they've done like split brain patients, where they'll show something to one eye and not to the other, and they can say what they saw, but they can't write what they saw with the other arm. Brains are weird. It's the problem with the subject is we are weird freaking creatures. We're so freaking weird. And oversimplifying lucid dreaming, when you start to get to the beyond the wish fulfillment, I think it starts to become actually this existential crisis subject, where you're like, I've just been walking around in my brain and talking to a part of my brain that looked like Albert Einstein, and it told me something that I wouldn't have known. And it's, how do you explain that as a little monkey primate creature that gets up and has to go to work? So so hopefully that answers your question, Tom. I don't know if it does.
I think let's see, stick around because school will be interested. Well, and so Maine, greetings from Germany. Nice to see you. Nice to see you as well. And Cryospec won't be able to stick around. Thanks for tuning in. And Dr. Foxy has thoughts on bedtime wild. Have you ever done any?
As in trying to have a wake initiated, I call them maintained awareness streams, just because it's less of a mouthful. But I've tried. I mean, that was basically my approach as a kid, right? So it was like catch the moment I fell asleep. But the reason it was impossible was because you go into non-REM, which is a bit like the Greek river of forgetting, the river Lethe. So the moment you hit non-REM, it's like game over. Welcome to Potato Land. So, but waking up in the night, and if REM's around the corner, you can catch that moment-ish. So for me, trying to induce a wild at the beginning of the night would basically be just pointless. It would be like trying to give up chocolate. It's never going to happen. So,
but
it might work for some people. I again, there's no set rules for everyone.
I've noticed that what seems to, and it might just be because I have like hyperphantasia or whatever you call that, that these NREM dreams or these liminal dreams, for me, they become so vivid and clear, and I think they turn into dreams eventually. And so I think that that's kind of what happens to me. But even so, beginning of the night is just, I mean, it's 20 times harder. It's the way that I say it is, in order to wild, you usually need to lose something, sort of. You kind of have to lose a bit of your control of your mind in order to let the dream play out. And at the beginning of the night, you have to lose so much more that it's almost impossible to not either just lay there and not lose anything, or to just fall asleep. It's a lot.
Really good way of putting it. It's pretty much exactly what I said, actually, which is you need to have like a crack in the door, right, for the dream to come through. And that crack, I think, is distraction. So I really don't, I think when LaBerge was defining dialed and wild, I think we have to remember those are just, they're the map, not the territory. And I don't think there's any, again, a personal opinion, I think every wild is a dialed. It's just how much of a gap in distraction there was. So I don't think I've ever had a wild where there wasn't even a micro distraction, just a moment where my mind wandered to a different thought and then the dream was there. And it's that letting the letting go you're talking about, basically. So because if you stay hyper focused and like some kind of crazed Tibetan monk, you will just get insomnia, really focused, relaxing insomnia. But the dream can't sneak in. So that's good point.
Do you have any thoughts on how people always try to come up with like a unifying theory of how dream control works? Do you have any anything that you would say is like, oh, this is how it seems to work for everyone, or is there anything like that for you?
Not really. No, I think I'd be pulling it out of my butthole if I said there was. I think if anything, it's just areas of the brain coming online, and what we're trying to do is just work out clever ways to make. I don't think the brain wants to lucid dream. I'm pretty sure that. Well, I suppose it's an alternative theory that's kind of related, but I think the mind needs to differentiate between dreams and waking life. Not so much in the modern world, but in prehistoric times, the caveman times. The cavemen who were not able to tell the difference between dreams and reality wouldn't have lasted very long.
Right.
And dreams have a function, right? They're not just this random thing that happens at night. The brain is consolidating memories. It's doing problem solving, all of the bits and pieces, the house cleaning that dreams do. So they're necessary, but if there's too much overlap, if it interferes with the executive function, so I don't know about I need to dial back and explain what I'm saying. So when you're awake, your brain uses the executive system, which is basically your sense of identity, the story you tell yourself about yourself. So it's like what I did yesterday and the day before and blah, blah, blah. You don't want dreams to interrupt that, because otherwise it just completely degrades the sense of self, because you've suddenly got this percentage of non-real things. So I think evolution just weeded out lucidity as a standard thing, because it would have been, even if not massively negative, even just a small negative with evolutionary theory tends to weed things out. So I think we're lucky that it didn't get completely weeded out, and that dreams didn't just happen completely in the privacy of the brain and we had no access to them. So I think we're lucky that didn't happen, because now that we don't have to worry about being eaten by tigers, we have the luxury to explore dreams this way. And I think this is why it's so difficult for people and why there's a variety, because we're not all from the same genetic heritage. So that didn't really answer your question, but it went off on a weird side tangent. So yeah,
oh, it's all good. What I usually tell people whenever they're asking, like, how do I do dream control? I say, do things that do things in your dreams, and then use those things to do other things.
Yeah, I like it. So yeah.
To try to break it down to be like, well, this is going to do this and this. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I'll have I use my phone in dreams a lot. I'll just click it and I will be like, hey, or like, bring me some pizza, and someone will bring me pizza. Other times my phone is just a brick that does nothing, and it's like that nothing is going to be perfect like that. Like it is.
Yeah, it's basically belief, isn't it? It's how confident you are that it will work on a near subconscious or unconscious level. Like the one thing I would suggest is that if you're trying dream control and something doesn't work, don't try it more than twice, because then you're just reinforcing that negative expectation. So say you're trying to walk through a wall and you walk into it, it's thud, try again, thud. Don't do the same thing again, because why would you get different results? So the very least, try walking into it backwards.
Yeah.
Just try a slight variety or variation on that, and don't reinforce it not working. But really, if you're struggling with dream control, I think dial back to what is working and rebuild your confidence that it is a dream, because oftentimes it's just, I suppose this is where the definition of lucidity gets important. So if you know that you're dreaming, but you're not cognizant enough to fully know what that means, then you get dream control problems. Because if you really know what it means to be dreaming, then you have the confidence that anything's possible. But that requires a little bit of additional metacognition and reminding yourself and building confidence and all that malarkey.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot from people about how like just being super conscious of it being a dream and stuff like that makes it to where they're able to control the dream so much easier. That it never seemed to help me. What was actually crazy for me was that in dreams where I was like present, aware, like I am doing this, it felt so much like real life that it was so hard for me to do anything. It was like, no, this is a solid table. I can't go through that. And so I spent a long time. I had a dream character help me with some of the things, and it's crazy to me. My mind is like, oh well, he lives here, so it makes sense. Like that, it's like
a good idea.
Unconscious part of my mind that just spends its time in dreams, and it can explain it to me. But
it's basically confidence by proxy. That's what you're doing. Sort of, finding a local. And I like that. So because I do the same with reading. So I know it varies for everyone, but for most people, text doesn't stay stable in dreams. Although I have noticed a weird backwards thing with that, where people who are dyslexic don't get the unstable text in dreams. I'm not sure how universal that is, but I have noticed that. But as someone who writes and reads, I wanted to, explore sort of the Library of Babel of the dream world. But that's useless if you're picking up books and it's just gibberish. So what we'll just do is get a dream character to read it, or find the audiobook version.
That's a good idea. Dream character to read it.
Finding weird. And also, if you're cognizant enough to have that problem solving, then that kind of answers the question: are you truly lucid? Because you're looking for those solutions. But I think the real sign that whether or not you're lucid is if you're taking any part of the dream too seriously. So, if you're being chased by the monster and you're genuinely scared, then you're not really lucid, because a lucid dreamer knows it's a figment of the imagination. I mean, it might still be quite horrendous. Like having a demon drawling into your face is not nice. But if it bites you, it's not going to do any true harm other than psychological damage, I guess. Maybe that's just about personal stoicism. I don't know. So.
Well, I think it's interesting because it's going to be a little different because of like if I'm watching a movie, I know that the movie isn't going to hurt me, but I'll still get scared sometimes,
Yeah. So there's, but never scared enough to
run.
I'm guessing you don't hide behind the couch, although you do when you're a kid, right? So that's learned behavior. So it can, like I was watching Battlestar Galactica, the remake, again for the first time in years last night, and it's getting so caught up in the character development and stuff, and then, but that's a choice, right? You kind of allow it to happen, because otherwise going to the cinema would be a freaking nightmare.
And that's one thing that I think that's one of the things I try to stress with people as far as dream control goes, is a lot of it you're gonna kind of hit like a wall of things you can do if you're just like, oh, I'm lucid and everything is in my control, or if you, unless you, like you said, you're going for all of these I can't remember what you said, like basically just insane experience after you're trying to not experience similar things. Whereas for me, a lot of times, like I like to talk to a dream character and think, like, at least while I'm there, I like to think of them as a person, because then I can hopefully get more out of that conversation. And
absolutely,
that. And
Yeah, I mean, and also it's you're already sort of if you make an assumption that it's not a person, that's still your assumption. So
that's true.
you kind of have to. This is where humility comes in, right? So I hate the word humility because the moment you talk about being humble, it sounds not humble.
Yeah.
But if you go in there just with the I really don't know, this could be anything, then and that's kind of why I want to explore the fringe aspects of this, because I know that I don't know, and I know that I don't already have pre-existing opinions on what the inside of a black hole looks like, for example. So, other than maybe slightly influenced by Interstellar or whatever the film was called.
Yeah.
I'm beginning to overheat. By the way, I will have to wrap up relatively soon. By the way, because I've got a tuition session in a little bit. But
Sounds good.
so yeah.
All right. Let's get this one more question here, and then we'll wrap her up. What would be the end goal or purpose of metacognition practice in the general lucid dreaming practice? Just curious about it. Tad confused.
Okay, so metacognition is basically thinking about thinking or observing thinking. And if you think about that, what is a reality check? It is really it's a form of metacognition. So the principle is, as far as I'm concerned, and I suppose basic psychology stuff, you have to engage certain parts of your brain to do that. And mostly that's, again, this is shorthand for lots of other parts of the brain, but the prefrontal cortex is what you generally use for metacognition. That part of the brain looks at what the rest of the brain's doing. And so to have a lucid dream in physical terms, you want your prefrontal cortex online. So metacognition is basically practicing bringing your prefrontal cortex online during times that are similar to dreams, or could be dreams. Actually, similar to dreams is a bad way to think of it. So, times which could be dreams.
Yeah.
And those times are that you judge that based on observation of your dreams and what people generally call dream signs. But I would just say get to know the personality of your dream world. I think of it as so on the channel I've got this whole weird alien theme. I'm the total alien nerd, but I like to think of the subconscious mind as an alien that lives inside of you. And it speaks in abstract metaphors and universes, and it's what's the film with the alien which speaks in all of the ink blobs, whatever that is. Someone's probably said
Not sure.
Arrival, maybe. But this alien inside of yourself, your subconscious mind, learn its personality, learn how it communicates, but it communicates in worlds and characters, and then that gives you, let the dreams tell you what to do. Your dreams will tell you what to look for. You technically don't need lucid dream teachers at all. All a lucid dreaming teacher is really doing is giving you a slap around the face saying, look at your brain, so, and pay me for it at the same time. But I mean, if I could learn to lucid dream as a 5-year-old, just with a stubborn question, can I catch the moment I fall asleep? And go on to have a lifetime of lucid dreams and turn it into a weird career, then you don't need any of the techniques. You don't need us guys. I mean, obviously, it's nice to have someone who's been down the path already and stuff. I don't want to get myself completely out of a job, but you can do it completely on your own, never reading anything about lucid dreams. It's if you're the kind of person who observes your brain and cares about and thinks deeply about things, I think you end up there anyway. I think if you find that stuff boring or you struggle with it, then you just won't get there, because you get tired of the whole process.
Yeah, that's the way that I explain it as far as that part is I usually say, like, I'm like, in my mind, I'm like a dream explorer. Every night I'm going to the same world or same like universe, but it always looks different. So what are the rules of this universe? What does it feel like? And when I wake up, I'm like, okay, well, this is like my quest log of like, okay, last night I did this. This is what happened while I was there. And I got to know my dreams that way, just thinking of it as like, instead of thinking of it as like, oh, well, these are just random synapses in the brain, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, this is a place I'm going. And that place has insane rules, and people change more faces, and places change how far they are apart and stuff. But it's to go with it with like curiosity, your own brain.
Yeah.
is really good.
Yeah, I think you're saying place, I'm saying weird alien. It's like whatever inspires you, right? So for me, like I've just always been fascinated with the unknown and alien life, that sort of thing. So it's kind of by using that metaphor, I'll stay interested. For you, it's a place. For other people, it might be thinking of going to a different dimension. You know, I as much as I make fun of the reality shifters, it works for them. You know, it is actually working for them. So if that's what they need for it to work, then fine. My issue is when they tell people they go into other dimensions, really. Because like, well, if that is the case, why do you keep coming back to this one? This one kind of sucks at the moment. So, you know, you've chosen a weird timeline to return to. So, yeah. But on that note, I really best wrap up because sorry to cut it short. But
all right, sounds good. If you just want to shout out your place and any upcoming things you have.
Yeah, I don't like to blow my own trumpet. I'm too British for that. But Lucid Dream Portal here on YouTube. If you're interested in this twat and what they have to say about lucid dreams, and thelucidguide.com will help you find everything else I do. But yeah, the most important thing, varied sources. Don't take any one person's word for anything, not mine. I'm not going to say not yours because that's really rude to say that. But just remember that we're all weird little humans on planet Earth and we'll work it out for ourselves together. Or something nice like that.
Well, it was nice talking with you.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me here.
All right. We'll see you. All right. Well, everyone stayed mostly good in the comments. I told you guys, it'd be nice. My job in life is not to make enemies. It's to have a good life and be nice to people. You guys can do that too. Does anybody have any more questions for me? I can stream for a little bit longer now that that's up. I thought the interview went really well. It was a good conversation. I'll just wait a little bit and see if anything pops up. I'll answer this while we're waiting. Have I ever tried to get a dream character to tell you you're dreaming in all your dreams? I've seen lots of people try this. I don't see any reason why it would be any easier than just telling yourself that you're going to be dreaming in your dreams. This is, I mean, you're using intention to do that. You're just doing it in a roundabout way. And the more stops you're making with intention like that, the harder it's going to be consistent. I don't see that as being something you're going to just like magically have. I know someone that claims to do it, but I'm not sure on them. It's a very interesting and seems very personal thing that they've set up. Have you ever struggled with staying awake too long after awake back to bed? Sometimes when I do notice an awakening, I'll stay awake too long to perform a technique properly. Yes, sometimes. Usually after like a really vivid dream, if I spend a lot of time like journaling or something like that, or if I get too excited, or if like something wakes me up. But usually I have no issue going back to sleep. My issue is usually going to sleep. So my goal is usually trying to make sure that I fully like wake up and work on the technique, because if I don't, then I'll just kind of slog through it. When you move around your world, do you perceive movement at the physical level, like moving each limb, or do you float over surfaces for general movement? It depends on where I am and what I'm doing. Sometimes I'll just walk around, but oftentimes I just kind of float. Usually I can feel my skin, my body move and everything like that. That's the normal, is walking around like normal. But I generally don't like walking because I'll trip on dream stuff a lot. So I just kind of like float like an inch or so above ground. Heard Daniel say that perhaps we shouldn't biologically want or be able to lose a dream, and there's a predisposition that makes lucid dream. So in your opinion, Sensei, why should we be able to lucid dream, and what benefit does it offer? So I don't worry about like biologically what we should do. I don't think that humans like ever like biologically we're ever anything about or we're ever predisposed to go to the bathroom inside or to make food the way that we do, but I like it. So I don't consider biological things like that to be an ought. It's just an is. So uh, I think that we can lucid dream, and we can. So it's biologically it's there. It's not that big of a deal. I don't think it destroys our sleep practice. Um, so I'm not sure if you're saying like morally or if you're saying some other way. I don't think that we're going to get the idea that we shouldn't lucid dream just because it's hard. I'm usually floating around until I explicitly start realistic. Was your daily practice? My daily practice for a long time was to wake up 3 to 6 times a night. During those wakings, I would write down about a sentence or two, like up to a paragraph, about each dream when I woke up. Then I would do mild, and then I would check and see if wild was there, and then I would go back to sleep. It would take around 3 to 5 minutes. It was a lot of work. I was very intense in my 20s. So I don't know. I don't think I could do that as much today. I don't have that much drive to get better dreams like I did back then. So I did a lot of mild. I did a lot of incubation practice. I did a lot of wild practice. I tried SSILD. I tried pretty much any technique you can think of, but I always did mild. I would just kind of add on to it. I didn't like to I didn't like to lose the mild that I knew was working. So even if I knew that it would take away from my intent for mild to do another technique before or after, I felt like being able to consistently keep the habit up helped a lot. James, waiting for you to answer. Yeah, Venrix, I think that movement a lot of times is just going to be based on like your own, what you're paying attention to in the dream at the time, like your perspective moving around. Does tech work reliably in your dream, or is it very glitchy? It's very glitchy for me generally. Depends on which tech we're talking about. I had a lot of, like, my phone generally works, but sometimes it won't. If I find a dream item and I spend like a quest to go get it, then that tech will generally work. It feels like it's more part of the dream more than it is part of my subconscious, which doesn't make any sense at all. But that's how it feels to me. And that thing seems like it belongs there and it acts like it's there. So that type of stuff works really well. With things like phones, what I've noticed is a lot of times that the interface doesn't work as well for people. So what I generally recommend is to just use voice commands to your phone. I feel like that's really helpful. Just like, hey, open up the app, call this person, stuff like that. A lot of times you can get to the app that you want just by talking to your phone, and then it'll be like, hey, can you open up an app? Can you open up an app that like shoots fire out when I push a button, right? And it could just open that up and you just click a button. What are my thoughts on wilds technically being dialed? So I've said before that I think all dials and wilds are basically the same thing. I don't think people ever fully lose consciousness. We just lose our memory to some degree or another. And we lose the ability to connect memories well, so we don't store them at all. And so I think that's why the difference is going to be in one of them, you pass through and you remember the consciousness passing through, and the other one, you consciously pass through, but then you forgot that you consciously passed through. So it makes sense to me. Like it seems like a legitimate thing to believe. I've definitely had some wilds that were near instant, but that also could mean that I completely just forgot the phase through it. It felt like I was immediately passing through, but maybe I just forgot. You can't really remember what you forgot, We're able to do it, so we can do it. We shouldn't let the difficulty of something discourage us. I also recognize there could be cultural implications that haven't necessarily. That's it. to encourage us to pursue lucidity. But if you were to convince somebody that lucid dreaming is worth it, what benefits would you mention? I would say that most of the benefits are going to be control of your mind. You can sort of, like, I know a lot of people, they don't seem to care about control of their mind. The ones that do care, this would be an avenue for them. Like, let's see. Like, my wife isn't interested in lucid dreaming. She doesn't see it as very helpful. But she also, she's a very, when she chooses to do something, she does it, and she doesn't forget it very easily. She doesn't, she wakes up, she does her work, spends time with her family, stuff like that. There's not like, I tried to do this thing and I wasn't able to do it in her. Whereas for me, like, a lot of times I'll be like, I want to do these like 5 things, and then 4 of them that get done, the 5th one's gone. So in order to get that 5th one more consistently, things like lucid dreaming have helped me to gain a better control of my mind, to more consistently get things done in my waking life. And free tropical vacations, like, come on. There's also, I really like fiction. I really like stories. I really enjoy things like this. So for me, it's kind of just another avenue to see stories and people and places that are new and exciting. And I'm hoping that at some point in the future, I'd have time to write a book, stuff like that. I would pull a lot of ideas from dreams for that. That would be intriguing, but that, yeah, it's just a lot of it. It's so much up to personal preference. I wouldn't try to convince anyone to lucid dream if they aren't interested in it. There's no way, I don't think, that you can convince someone that it's interesting and convince them to stay through all of the work. Yeah. All right. So free everything, right? Well, and I guess if you were like on a diet or something like that, it might be a good way to like curb the cravings, but I don't know, because a lot of the cravings come from your stomach, and those things aren't going to get better whenever you wake up. But it may be a placebo effect that someone needs to quit smoking or to, quit drinking soda or something like that. It's really, it could be that, but the problem is you're working really hard on something that I think is generally only going to be worth it if the time spent is only going to be worth it if you are exploring it for fun, and exploration and self, like, just kind of, I don't want to say actualization, but you're just kind of like, you're going in it to enjoy it for itself. To try to do it in order to stop yourself from like smoking cigarettes, or to stop yourself from something like that, that's going to be really, it's going to be a really difficult like route to take. Someone in the Tech for Dreaming Discord learned lucid dreaming specifically for that, for feasting despite diet. Yeah, that's an interesting. How well did they learn it? Like, were they able to actually do it, or was it that just their goal? I generally eat a lot in dreams, but I don't eat a lot in dreams to make up for not eating while I'm awake. But I just eat a lot in dreams just because it's something I can do with my hands and mouth while I'm just like walking by. I'll grab something. I'll be driving down the road and I'll just stop at a grocery store, convenience store, grab a few things and walk out. It's pretty nice. Like, it's just like a little pit stop in the middle of my dreams. Sometimes I hear people talking about using lucid dreams to learn more about themselves. How does that work? You can talk about like the metacognition that Daniel Love was talking about, which is, you get to learn sort of how you think. You get to learn how you personally are going to, like, how your brain is working through things. See where different connections are in your head. It's kind of a path that I don't think is ever like fully realized, but it's a similar type of thing you learn. Like, if you go and play a sport, you're going to learn about yourself, right? You're going to learn about your body. You're going to learn about how it interacts with the sport. But if you are doing this mental thing, you're going to be learning about your mind and how you think, and it can lead to all sorts of breakthroughs and stuff. But for the most part, I'd say curiosity is usually the thing that's satiated at the end of the day. I don't think that I haven't seen anybody that went from like sitting around not doing anything with their life to being like a productive member of society just through lucid dreaming. Now, that might be a thing, but what I've seen usually is people that enjoy it, and they learn about it and they find it fulfilling and enjoyable, but it's kind of like on their way upward a little bit, you know, like they are already like kind of on an upward trajectory of learning about themselves and enjoying that. And then lucid dreaming kind of adds on to that. I'm guessing her goals expanded down the road. Oh yeah. Yeah, it's hard to say because I've met so many people, or I've heard so many people say, you know, I started lucid dreaming for this. I started lucid dreaming for this. Like, you know, like Mr. Beast says, I started lucid dreaming to learn how to make YouTube videos. People like that, they'll say these things, but I never know how far they went in it. You know, like were they weekly? Were they monthly? Do they get one lucid dream? You know, learn my brain does work in images. I only had to do LDP's metacognition once for that. Can recommend that. That is interesting that you did his metacognition and you learned that your brain works mostly in images, especially since he says he has aphantasia. But yeah, the metacognition, I mean, it's stepping back and observing your brain, how it works. It's recommended in Exploring the World of Lucid Dreams. It's kind of a recommended thing in most spiritual practices and in most psychological practices, stuff like that, is to just observe like what your body is doing. I think of it as like, I don't see myself as like this guy. This is just like the body that I own. You know, this is a brain that I own, and I just kind of observe it. And I do also think that I'm the one that makes decision. It's not just an observer. It's also choosing based on the perspective and based on what it sees. So I see my consciousness as something that chooses. And sometimes I can choose to just step back and see, what is my body doing? What's my brain doing? And this is one of the things that we've seen in psychology before. I mean, just with metacognition, because that seems to be more helpful than almost anything for changing a lot of practices for people, is that, let's see, what was it? Oh yeah, what would you tell yourself if you were someone else? Like, well, if you had like a problem, looking at it as an outsider observer, what would you tell yourself to do? There's a study that they did that showed that people, whenever they're given like pet medicine, they feed their pet every single time it says to. Like 90% of the time, people feed their pet the time that it says to and the amount that it says to, and they go through the entire thing. But when they get medicine for themselves, they forget about it. They don't take care of themselves as much as they would take care of others. I know like Jordan Peterson's like a controversial person, but he says to treat yourself as if you're someone that you are responsible for taking care of. I think that's interesting. Do you think we should teach our children about lucid dreaming, just the fact that it exists, or even teach them how? I treat it like every other hobby. I've told my kids about it. They enjoy it a little bit. They don't spend extra time working on it. They've all, as far as I'm concerned, they've all had lucid dreams, but they're not extremely interested in it. So they don't spend the time to get really good at it. I'm hoping in the future one of them or two of them will, but I generally don't push it. We're pretty much like, our idea as a family with hobbies is you can have whatever hobbies you want. We'll make fun of them, but you can still do them. My daughter plays soccer, for instance, even though it's not a real sport. So it's the way to do things. I'm not going to force them to do a hobby. I'll force them to do school. I'm not going to force a hobby though. Yeah. All right. I think I'm going to wrap things up. I'll wait a few more seconds, see if any more questions pop in, and then I will be heading out. Thank you everybody for coming today. I think it was a really fun stream. And yeah, I will talk to you guys later.